What's going on, guys? My name is Justin. I'm here today to walk you through the most used and most common library in data science or just Python in general, Pandas, right here. So welcome to Pandas Mastery from Zero to Hero. That's what I'm going to name our blog here, right? So if you're just getting started in data science or you kind of want to take your Python data analysis to the next level, this video is definitely for you. So we'll kind of cover everything from how to create a data frame to advanced tricks like grouping, merging, applying functions, and performance tips. So let's start a journey to Pandas. So it depends on what you want to use. Some people prefer to use Visual Studio Code for their coding purposes. Some people prefer PyCharm, Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Lab, or Anaconda. I'm typically used to Anaconda, so I will open up my Anaconda prompt here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into my folder and I'm going to open up Jupyter Lab. So just to kind of give a side note here, what I'm going to be teaching or walking you through is just kind of like the basics of Pandas, and it's going to come in parts. So this is part one, where we kind of initialize this whole entire lesson. So here, once you're in Jupyter Lab or Google Colab, it's up to you how you want to use it. The syntax is pretty much the same. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create my first notebook. And for organization purposes, I do like to rename my notebooks. You can either right-click here or right-click here on this tab to rename your notebook, or what I usually do is just I use the shortcut pressing F2. So when I press F2 here, I'll just name this as Pandas Part 1 Intro. Okay. And again, the purpose of this is just to kind of give you a walkthrough of what Pandas can do. And then in the later videos, we'll be able to delve a little bit more deeper into the specifics and how we can actually use it for data analysis purposes. So we're not going to use a data set here. We're going to actually create our own. As always, the first thing that I like doing is importing my libraries from the get-go. Right? So it's up to you how you want to do it. Some people do import their libraries. Some people create their markdowns first. For me, I'm going to import our library as PD, right? So we're going to import pandas as PD. That is the syntax to import this library. And then I'm going to create kind of like a markdown here. Markdown files are a way to organize your notebook by inserting explanations or titles to each of your code lines or your boxes, whatever you want to call it. So this is going to be called Intro to Pandas. Okay. And that creates that text over there. A tip, how do I switch from a code text like so? If I write an Intro to Pandas here, that's basically where you would plug in your code, right? But how do I switch from this code syntax or code box into a markdown file for the text? You can usually just press escape, and once you're out of that box, you can hit M, and that will turn it into a markdown. We're going to jump right in. So in Pandas, the most important object you'll use is what we call a data frame. And think of it as a supercharged Excel table. So let's start creating one by using a Python dictionary, right? So let's creating your first data frame. Right, so we'll create that markdown there. And the goal here is to, let's say, create a data frame with employee data. Okay, so our goal is to create a data frame with employee data. Since we've already imported this, some people would like to also import it as soon as they type in their title. It's up to you how you want to do that. It works the same way, but I kind of want to containerize all my libraries at the very top. This is how I work. Again, no harm if you want to do it like so. And let's name this variable data. And here we're going to create a dictionary of the information that we want to produce. So of course, if we're looking at employee data, there's always going to be a name, right? Before I proceed, a side note or disclaimer, I'm assuming that you are sort of familiar with Python in general. So to be able to understand, like, what am I doing here? Am I creating a list? Am I creating an array? Am I creating a dictionary, and so forth? So my assumption is you already kind of have an idea of how Python works. So in this case, I'll create a list of names, right? So we can name it Alice. Let's just create Justin, me. Let's plug in a name Charlie, maybe Diana. And because we're working with employee data, we want to maybe kind of organize this data to the extent that it's full, right? So we want to include like their age maybe, right? So let's assume Alice is 25. And with integers, you don't really add these like markers up top, right? Because this is not a string, this is a number. So we'll just plug in 25 for Alice, Justin is 30, and Charlie's 35, and then Diana's 40, right? Maybe we include department here as well, just to make the data set a little bit more full. So let's assume, because we're typing in a string again, let's assume Alice works in the HR, Justin works in the data science department, Charlie works for finance, and Diana is in IT. Okay. So now we've created this list or dictionary. So if I type in data here, you're going to be able to see that we actually populated some data, right? So how do we turn this into a data frame? Well, the simplest way is to utilize the function or method called data frame. So how do we do that? Well, typically we assign a data frame into a DF. That's kind of like the standard syntax in the data science world or machine learning and so forth, right? So we assign it into a DF. You can name it whatever. You can name it employee data if you want, or whatever, right? You can name it whatever you want, but I'm just used to assigning it to a DF. And what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to utilize the library. So because I named it as PD, I'm going to do pd.dataframe. And then you can also press tab as a shortcut to be able to auto-populate that. But what does the data frame argument or method contain? Like, what are the arguments that we can actually fill it with? So you can see here that if we're calling data frame and we're initializing it, we can also assign an index. We can also create columns, data type, and copy. And those are methods or arguments that we'll actually delve into a little bit more in the later parts of this series. But for this sake, we'll just create as simple as, hey, chuck in the dictionary that you created, right? And once you've assigned that, you can actually print that and be able to see the difference of just having a dictionary versus having an actual data frame. So here it's a little bit more organized. It's very clean. You can see that we have default indices or indices here, 0, 1, 2, 3. And it'll be useful to have those or understand these indexes later on. But you can see that we've assigned Alice, Justin, Charlie, Diana under the name, age, and so forth, right? Like they had the departments and so. So each key in the dictionary kind of becomes a column name, and each list becomes a column of data. So this gives us a labeled table with columns for name, age, and department. But let's say that you want to maybe add, let's say you're given a data set, right? And the data set doesn't really have anything else. Like you are just given this type of data, right? A list of lists, if you will. So let's say you're given Eve, and we don't know what this number is yet, right? Like let's just type in, we know that maybe we can assume that it is age, but let's just say that you are given this type of list of lists, right? And then we'll call Frank maybe and 50-year-old, and then we have finance as his department. But how do we turn this into a data frame? Right? You can actually create list of lists data frames. df2, that's just what we're going to call it. You're going to call PD to data frame again. And there you're going to insert data 2. However, if you do this and you print it out, it doesn't really have any labels, right? It almost becomes unlabeled data. So how can we create a data frame where if we're given list of lists, and let's say we are given the metadata, let's assume that, okay, name, age, and department, how can we turn that into a much cleaner data frame? Well, you can actually call columns as an argument within the data frame method and assign those within a list. So we know that the meta tag stated that the first variable in this list is the name, the second variable is age, and the third variable is department. So if we actually do this, and then we re-enter that or rerun that, you'll be able to see that we actually assigned columns that's correct based on the metadata that we have. This is something you can do to explicitly define the column names. And if you're working with, let's say, NumPy arrays, which you often are in numerical computing, you can use this type of functionality too, right? So let's import NumPy here. Okay. So let's say we have this array where the array is list of lists. So we have Grace, who is 30 and is working in IT. And then let's say we have Hank, who is 42 and is in HR. How do we assign this syntax into an actual data frame? In this case, what we can do is we can also do the pd.dataframe, and then we're going to plug in our data as an argument, which is ARR or R, and then we can assign the same syntax, right? So we know it's a name, we know it's an age, we know it's a department. So we'll run that, and then if you run that file, you'll get the same exact results as the one above.